Welcome to the podcast, Kill Complacency. Here we inspire intentional living by motivating others to handle hard better. And here's your host, Marty Hofmann.
Hey, you guys are going to love this podcast. This is from our plumber, the plumber we've been using. He's a great guy. I think you can hear it in his voice. Really intentional about living now. The reason I wanted to bring him on here today is I knew he had a story about change in his life and going from living a life, in the dumps under substance abuse to living a life of intentionality. He loves his job, loves his family, but it came down to that shift. What were some of your takeaways?
Yeah, you can really tell he loves his family just by the things he talked about how he's intentional with certain things. And I just really loved that. And he really just pointed out how important it is to have positive influences in your life, whether that just be even just things you watch or listen to, how important that is. And if you guys keep listening, then you'll be able to hear that something crazy happened on Christmas Eve, and it pretty much changed his life.
Yeah, it did change his life. That was a turning point for him. He's got some great advice at the end. Stay tuned, and thank you guys so much. This is Jason the plumber. Hey guys, this is Jason the plumber, and he's our plumber. He's, done 4 or 5 houses maybe for us, and counting. And I know he's got a cool story about really killing complacency in his life and living more focused and more intentional. So, Jason, could you kind of tell us your story?
Sure. I grew up in a single father household. My mom left when I was 7. That created a lot of turmoil, obviously. My brothers were much older than me, so it affected me a lot more than it affected them. So as time, single father, military family, he's very strict, once all the rules followed. So, I rebelled, I acted out not having a mother. I didn't know what I was angry at, but I was angry at something. So I spent basically from about 14 to 27 basically ruining my life, doing drugs, drinking alcohol, hanging out with bad people, being a bad person. Never hurt any innocent people, but definitely affected the people that were living the lifestyle I was. So I did that for a very long time, had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of broken relationships with women. I feel very blessed that I never ended up getting a woman pregnant during that time. I'm very lucky, so I don't have to live with that here. I've only had children with a woman that I love. I'm very thankful for that. My criminal life was coming to an end one way or another, right? Like, you can only ride that train for so long. I was about 26 or 27. I was dating a woman who had 4 children. None of them were mine. And I was kind of living this lifestyle.
Where were you living at this time?
I was in Wichita. I had spent a lot of time. So in these years, I graduated high school in Hawaii. Then I moved back to Kansas, went to St. Louis, moved back to Kansas. Went to Lawrence, Kansas, went to KU for a year. That didn't work out. Moved around again, kind of did this whole thing for a while. Tried to join the Navy. That didn't work out. At the end of all this, ended back up in Wichita, dating this woman with these kids. And then we went to a bar one night, and there was a guy hitting on the woman I was dating. I had been drinking as well. I'd asked the guy to stop. He was belligerent. Back then, I didn't really control my anger very well, so I'd punched the guy. Guy went to the hospital. He had gotten some stitches, no serious injuries, but they had already been in trouble previous to this, and they had already, warned me. So at that point, they were trying to put me in prison for 10 years over that just because of the other stuff that I had done previous to that. So I sat in the county jail for about 90 days. I got a public defender. I met with her. And then she was they came with a deal after 90 days, and they were 6 years in prison. Now, I've never hurt anybody, right? I've never the only people that have ever been affected are people who are doing the same stuff I'm doing, and no one's been seriously injured, just kid stuff basically. But they wanted to lock me away for a very long time, and they were not playing around with me. So I contacted my dad. Thank God that my dad has assets to be able to help me in something like that. We got a fancy lawyer. And then I ended up getting a parole deal, what they would call, they put you on probation, but it's under the Department of Corrections. So you're still a felon, and you're basically on parole, just didn't have to go to prison. Still did not change my life. Still doing the same things. Maybe turned it around for a little bit, for a few months, but I went right back to doing what I was doing. I had nothing to live for except to chase whatever fulfillment I wanted out of life, right? And that's basically all I was doing. So back on the drugs, back on all this stuff. I went into a probation meeting. I failed the drug test. I took off. 6 months later, it's Christmas Eve. The news comes on. There I am, Kansas Most Wanted.
Really?
Yeah. So that was a big eye opener for me there.
Jason, in the midst of all that, what's going through your head? I mean, you're using substance, you're abusing your body. The back of your head, it's not good, right?
Right.
But you just keep coming back for more, right?
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
And
there's all kinds of things that trigger it and bring
Sure.
you back. You get out, you get clean 90 days. Your dad puts up some money, saves your butt. You're back in. Now it's Christmas Eve. What's going through your head?
During this same period, the thing that has changed my life more than anything happened, which is my wife had our first child.
Okay.
So I had my first baby as Kansas Most Wanted, on the run, but that's also where I started plumbing. I needed a job. I couldn't get a job on paper because they would obviously find me. So what I found was someone who needed a plumbing laborer and was willing to pay me under the table. And so I started plumbing, and I was on the run for a couple years.
Did that ever come to a head?
It did. But what happened, what happened that Christmas Eve? Well, what happened that Christmas Eve is I decided to change everything in my life. What I thought was the only way I was going to be able to stay out of prison is that the next time that I went to court, whenever I was caught, I would have to have a large catalog of good things that I was doing and had done. So 2 years later, when they did end up, I was at McDonald's. By happen of circumstance, there was another incident I witnessed. They ran my name, so forth and so on. Got taken down, got back out. But I'd started plumbing. I had rented an apartment.
Yeah.
I bought a car. We had, bought all the stuff that we needed, baby stuff. Baby was born. So when I ended up getting caught and brought in, when I went in front of so it all came to a head about 3 months later. They continued things down the road, and then eventually what happened is there was one court date, and that's when things were going to get decided. So here we are that day. I remember it as clearly as anything I'll ever remember in my life. I put my baby in the car. I pulled out of my driveway, and I remember looking in the rearview mirror thinking this may be the last time I see any of my stuff for a very long time. And that's hard to deal with, especially with like a 3-month-old baby and all that sort of stuff. But luckily I don't have a very large family. My family is very small, but they're very supportive.
Very
So,
loyal,
my mom came, my dad came, my wife was there, and the judge could obviously see that I had changed my life. I mean, it wasn't hard to see that I was clean, I was sober, I was in plumbing gear, I was covered in glue and primer. So basically what ended up happening is that he made a lot of threats to me. Basically, if you mess up again, that'll be it. And he gave me one more opportunity. He gave me the same, he didn't add any time to my probation. He gave me the same exact amount of time on probation that I had when I went on the run. So I walked it down. And then about 6 months after that, they allowed me to move out of the county to another county. My wife's from a town called Neodesha, Kansas. It's a very rural, small town. And then we moved out there just to kind of get a fresh start, get away from all the things in Wichita, all that sort of stuff. And that worked for about 3 months. And before, there's just no employment there. There's no prospects out there. I had like a $3,500 Ford F-150, and I bought like a $300 slide-in pop-up camper. My wife worked at the grocery store for like 2 weeks. She got a paycheck. It was $250, and we took off to Colorado. It was the best thing that I've ever done with my life. I really tried.
How did you pick Colorado, Jason?
I basically got a map out and picked like the 10 most booming plumbing cities in the
And
country.
Denver was one of them.
It was the biggest one at the time. And what I knew is that I had a passion for plumbing. I was good at it, and I had drive like no one else had. And I also have work ethic that's very hard to compete with. So when you have those sorts of things, it gives you I'm sure you have it too. It just gives you a confidence that you're going to be able to, you can take care of it. So when we got there, the next day I applied at the company called Colorado Mechanical Systems, and I was on a high-rise 3 days later plumbing, industrial buildings for the first time, and I haven't turned back since. It's just forward and forward. So
there was a shift in your life. I mean, your upbringing, so I think you said 14, you start spiraling.
Right.
And that goes on for a decade.
Sure.
And then the news thing happens. You've got a baby. You say, I've got to fix this. And you start making changes, very intentional changes to put the past behind you and move forward very intentionally. It sounds like, first of all, if you got clean, you made a good court appearance. You moved out of the county. You changed your environment. But you needed money, so then you changed your environment big time, right?
Right.
You did your research. That was cool. Went to Colorado, and did you learn? I mean, you're on a high-rise building doing industrial. You probably learned a lot more than you would have in Wichita, Kansas, right?
And it's the only thing I could have done to get that type of experience. I couldn't have came to Oklahoma City. I couldn't have went to Kansas City. I would have had to gone to Salt Lake City, Phoenix, Denver, Miami. These are the places where they're building things like that, so it had to be one of those places. So Denver was just the closest to home, and it seemed to have the best economy. Now, as far as my childhood, both of my parents are extreme alcoholics. My dad doesn't, thank God both of them have figured it out now. My mom, worse than anything. There was a period where I didn't talk to my mom for about 14 years as a child, but they're both bad alcoholics. So, you kind of see that growing up. My dad's family's from West Virginia. My mom's family's from Kentucky.
Okay.
So if that gives you any symbolism of like kind of what environment, I saw growing up. So I come from many generations of alcoholism. I have many cousins that died at bars, got shot, stabbed, all that sort of stuff. So it's just like kind of a lifestyle in my family that my dad and now me are trying to break.
Yeah.
Break
well,
the
you are
mold
breaking
on
it.
Sure.
You are, yeah. How long were you in Colorado?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. What, going back just a little bit, what we're in the midst of trying to clean things up. Is there anybody or any books or any broadcast, you said you do podcast, anything that you can remember that was like helpful to you as far as, or was it just, Jason, I'm a hard worker, I'm going to make this thing happen?
Sure, there's lots of different things. I fancy myself a pseudo-intellectual, so I watch a lot of like intellectual podcasts, Lex Friedman, things like that. I get a lot of motivation from that. I watch a lot of Jocko Willink, good, right? So, I mean, that's a big thing for me is when there's bigger challenges, good, there's a bigger challenge. Good. Now we're just going to get better at it. Right.
Can't do it.
And then one thing for me is that it was just, I'm the type of person that I want to climb a mountain right now. If there's a mountain in front of me, I'm going to climb it this second. And that's not really how you get yourself out of a situation like that. What I learned is that it's baby steps. It's one step at a time. It's one positive move at a time. And then over years of time, you can turn it around. But it doesn't happen overnight. And it doesn't happen in a year. If you spend a decade digging yourself a grave, it's going to take a decade to get yourself out of that grave. So
there's a book called The Spirit of Kaizen, and it's Kaizen, I guess how you say it. It's a Chinese word, but it's all about that. It's about small steps, and like in plumbing, instead of having an apprentice come in and say, we're going to run water lines today, you would break it down into steps, and you would say, hey, I need you to take this PEX and I need you to unroll it and stretch it from here to there. And then you would tell them the next step. And it's they say it's similar to in habits. You try to break it down as small as you can rather than telling the apprentice, go run water lines.
Right.
And he spends half the day walking in circles because he's afraid to ask, and he doesn't know what he's doing, and he wastes your time, wastes everybody's time.
Sure.
But breaking it into the Kaizen, small steps, like you said, you can build so much momentum.
Right.
Big steps can get bigger, or little steps can get bigger.
One thing my dad always taught me is you make a plan and you stick to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be hurdles. The plan's never going to go as planned. It may not even be the same plan by the time we get there. But just having a plan makes a huge difference. For a lot of years, I lived my life with no direction. I had nowhere to go. I was working in restaurants, couldn't figure anything out. Once I got into plumbing and I got a little bit of direction, once I had a woman behind me who cared and, cared about me, not the, when you live that sort of lifestyle, there's two of you.
Yeah.
There's the person you actually are, then there's the person you portray yourself to be. For that decade, women loved the person I portrayed myself to be, not the person I actually was. So I met Destiny, I was pretty much at the bottom, and she cared about me for who I was. She didn't care about my persona or what, people thought of me or anything like that. And those were huge things for me to get me to make a plan. I needed these stabilizing things in my life in order to do that. So they came in at the perfect time.
And that's what you told me a couple weeks ago. You said, it all changed when you met her, and it's amazing. It's amazing how much influence a good woman has behind a man.
Absolutely.
With helping him live more intentionally.
Just to men are meant to take care of things.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're living a life where we're only taking care of ourselves and we're, essentially selfish, that's not what men are put on the planet to do.
Yeah.
Men are put on the planet to take care of their family, take care of their wives, provide, those sorts of things. Once someone gave me the opportunity to do that, it fulfilled me entirely. And I've never looked back. My wife does not work. She's never worked. I'm insanely proud of that. Very, very rarely is that the case anymore. We live a very traditional lifestyle, and we're extremely happy with that. And I'm extremely happy that I found a woman who shared the same values that I did inside, not the persona me, but the true me. So I found a woman who shared those values, and then I didn't feel weird around her sharing those values. So you get around some of these people, they don't, if you start sharing wholesome values, that's not gangster, right?
Yeah.
That's not what they want to be a part of. And she wasn't ashamed to feel that way, and she liked the fact that I did care so much and I was so outgoing and things like that. So that was a big factor in everything changing. So
that's really cool. Yeah, they say behind every great man's a great woman. So
absolutely, I agree 100%. They're everything, right? I mean, they're the rock when we get home. When we go to work, they're reminding us of what we need to do. They're changing diapers and, everything that they do. And I'm just so grateful that I found somebody like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you're in Colorado. What'd you say?
Almost 2.5 years.
2.5 years. What brought you to Oklahoma?
So I had not became a journeyman yet. In Colorado, because there's so much construction, you could go your whole career, get journeyman wages, but never actually have to go take the test.
Okay.
Because you got the experience, and
they just bump you up.
And if you're with the company, you can get the money. But I was always on the mission to become licensed. I was always on the mission to become a master plumber. So once we realized we weren't going to really be able to raise a family in Colorado unless we lived in Greeley. If you've ever been to Greeley, Colorado, you know what that smells like. And then you're going to travel 2 hours.
Smelliest town in America.
Oh, my God. And those guys do that. They'll travel 2 hours each way to and from work just to live in Colorado. That way they can live in Greeley and afford a place. It makes absolutely no sense. But once we realized that we weren't going to be able to really raise our family the way we wanted, then we started looking at other options. Boeing had brought my dad to Oklahoma City. We're from Wichita. My brothers are in Wichita. So I was really thinking about going to Vegas because there's a lot going on there right now. But once you look at the amount of money you'll make versus cost of living, it's just very hard to compete with the Oklahoma City market, especially as a plumber. I think I took like a $2 an hour pay cut, but I pay hundreds of dollars less in rent. So, I mean, that made it a very easy decision. And then on top of that, there's two primary agencies that give the plumbing test in the country. One's called PSI, which is 32 states administer that same test. And then there's another company and only like 12 or 15 states administer those tests. Well, if you go to the PSI and you pass the test, like here in Oklahoma, that will qualify you to work in all 32 states without having to reciprocate your license right away or having to retest. So that was part of it too. Oklahoma offered the PSI testing. So when I became a journeyman, I could take my plumbing license anywhere. So that was a big motivating factor.
So how long you been in Oklahoma?
5 years.
5 years. You moved back here, you started a business, and you guys have been busting it ever since.
Well, I moved back here. I got a job. I got a job for a small hole-in-the-wall company when I first got here. It was pretty bad. They put me in like an old U-Haul truck. And then I fancied myself some big industrial commercial
Should've
plumber.
been making TikTok videos.
Yeah. So that didn't work out, and then I was looking for a commercial job. I was very unfamiliar with the union at the time. What I've ended up finding out is that in Oklahoma City, the union has essentially the commercial work cornered. So there's very few companies in town that are doing commercial work outside the union, like Lieberman, a few other companies do, but not many. I found a place called Plumbing Connections. I went out there. They gave me a shot. So that's ended up where I ended up testing and becoming a journeyman, and also where I ended up becoming a foreman. And then that company ended up joining the union. Then I entered to the union, and then we did that for a while. And then Dustin, my partner, called and basically said, hey, how do you feel about starting an Oklahoma City division? And I thought it was a great opportunity, and that was a little over a year ago, and we've been doing it ever since. So it's worked out great. I mean, it's hard to be a plumber nowadays and not make a living. If you're doing that, you're doing something wrong. It's because it's not very hard.
Yeah, there's a big lack. Do you know what's the shortage?
2 million plumbers
That's
in
what
the
I was
country.
thinking. 2 million right now.
Right.
And more every day because
every day
more people are retiring and are getting back in.
The average age of a plumber in the country is 56 years old.
The average age?
The average age. So I've been on jobs with hundreds of plumbers and pipe fitters. Generally speaking, at 38 years old, I'm normally one of the younger guys out on the job. The union does a better job recruiting younger guys, but they do a very bad job of keeping them. So what you'll find is you'll go to a union job site and you'll see a lot of younger kids out there, but they won't make it through that apprenticeship. So then they'll end up giving up on plumbing. When people think of plumbing, I just think that kids have the wrong perception of what a plumber is. You think of a heavy-set guy wearing overalls with his butt crack hanging out. But in all honesty, I never saw anybody else's number ones or number twos until like 10 years after getting into plumbing, because I was a new commercial and industrial plumber. So I put it in new and never saw it again. So there's just so much opportunity in the trade. There's so many different facets you can get into as well. Any mechanical trade stems from plumbing. The only reason I say this joke all the time, but the only reason that pipe fitters and HVAC guys have jobs is because plumbers didn't have the time to do it anymore. That's the truth. It was all plumbing originally, and then as the industries grew, plumbers couldn't continue to do the HVAC and the pipe fitting, and that's kind of how they became their own trades.
That's interesting.
So, fire suppression is all plumbing. I mean, there's just so much opportunity. I know superintendents that make $200,000 a year. No college education, GED, and they just were hard workers and they had a passion for the job, and that's really all you need.
And some intentionality.
Absolutely.
You can't just...
You got to be motivated.
You got to be motivated. You got to do more than...
The biggest thing for me with plumbing versus any other job I ever had, which changed everything as far as my career, was a couple weeks after I got that first real plumbing job, I woke up in the morning and I looked forward to going to work. I never had that in my entire life. It was an odd feeling. I'm like, let's go to work. And then the next day I was more excited and more excited. And then I was planning my days, and then I could, it just felt like in plumbing I had more control of my future than if I worked, at a corporation or whatever, because it's all on you. I got into plumbing 10 years ago. A lot of guys wouldn't be or starting a business at their point in their career, but you can get out of plumbing what you put into it.
Sure.
If you can get 20 years of knowledge in 10 years if you work hard enough.
You can in anything.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. Or you can waste 20 years.
Absolutely.
By not learning after year one.
I see a lot of guys in the union do that. A lot of what I would call career journeymen in the union, just guys that just don't want any more than that, right? That they're happy with that, and that's good, and they'll rock it to the end. I just don't have that in me. I'm always trying to go to the next thing, the bigger thing. What's next for us? How can we get more, faster, that sort of thing. So I'm always trying to figure out what the next big move is. Never settle, right? That's one of my personal statements is I just never settle. It's just you got to keep moving forward.
Awesome.
Once you settle, you die.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's like older people, right? You start to retire, you settle down, you die. The older people that keep moving and keep working, generally that I notice live longer.
Well, movement is medicine.
Sure.
So
and
it keeps you young.
Having something to live for too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Waking up in the morning to watch a soap opera, you probably, motivation may die there. So.
Well, that's a really cool story. Jason, what's been like an influential book or podcast or something in your life that you would like to pass on to others as far as, this was really monumentous for you?
I don't know if it would be a book, but for me, the biggest motivation is it's just a lifestyle change, right? I mean, I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan. That helps just keeping, and people like Joe Rogan, just keeping an open mind, understanding what's going on, being up to date, understanding the issues, things like that. But really, for me, it was changing my lifestyle. I don't listen to gangster rap anymore. I probably stopped that 10 years ago, and I don't dress like that anymore. Once I stopped doing all that and moved over here with you, Marty, I noticed my life got a lot easier, and I was a lot happier, and I could look at myself a lot easier in the mirror. You may not realize, and these kids may not realize it, but that music that they're listening to and that stuff that they're seeing, it is affecting the way they think. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, I grew up in the original gangster rap culture. I completely understand exactly what these kids go through. The more they listen to this stuff, the more they watch this stuff, the worse our culture is going to get. So it took me 10 years to turn it around. It's worse now. How long will it take for these kids to turn it around? So I think that societal changes, are going to be big for our future generation.
I like that, Jason, because I think we underestimate the power of influence and negative influence, and just the influence of anything, whether it's a peer or music or a substance. And it's really important for us to understand that power, but then realign with positive ones. And for you, I mean, if I could put words in your mouth, your wife, Destiny.
Yep.
Destiny became an anchor, a positive anchor, influence in your life. That was really something that helped you say, you know what? Away with the old. What's ahead? What's new?
Absolutely.
And I like that what you said there. We need to shut off the music. We need to quit looking at some of that YouTube or scrolling or whatever media,
right?
And letting that control and influence us.
One habit that I practice a lot is when I get home, I have a business number for a reason. So when I get home, I put the phone down. You know, I come home, do the little bit of work that I may need to do for the next day. I put the phone down. I let it die. If someone needs to get a hold of me, they can call the business number. How much clear-headed you are when just putting devices down and not having that influence in your face all the time, right?
Yeah.
It just you can just feel a difference. So that I find that very helpful, limiting, you know, how much time you got your face in the phone, because all that stuff is influential. And as parents, you know, we have to be very careful these days. We lived in Edmond, you know, for 3 or 4 years, and my daughter came home from school and was saying some of the things they were teaching out of the school that were just blatantly not true things, and basically motivated me to move to Crescent so I could, you know, have a more traditional education for my daughter or the Guthrie area. It's just so much better than Edmond. So, I mean, it's getting that bad that even kids like me at 38 are moving their kids to a rural area just to get an education, thinking that Edmond has the best, quote unquote, best education system in the state of Oklahoma. So
Yeah.
who's deciding that that's the best educational system, I wonder?
Yeah, good questions. Jason, if you, let's say I've kidnapped you. I've got a gun to your head. And I'm going to let you share one message with the world. What is the one message that Jason wants to share with the world before I let you go?
Start every day anew. Every day can be a new day. You don't have to carry with you tomorrow what happened today. And if you do, it's going to be a lot more difficult for you. It was hard for me in my life to let my mistakes go, but when I was eventually able to do that, my life got a lot easier. So if I'd like to share stuff with people, it's like, don't be so hard on yourself. When tomorrow starts, it's a new day for you.
That's so powerful.
And if you keep that sort of mentality, things won't always go right, but it's going to be easier for you to get through.
Well, you know, we can't change our past. What happened, happened. But we can literally shape our future by the choices we make today.
Absolutely.
So, like, I wish I'd planted a fruit tree 20 years ago, but I didn't. But I can plant one today, and I can have fruit in 20 years.
Absolutely.
But instead of beating myself up for what I didn't do, it's what you said. Start each day anew.
And you'd be surprised how much time you can make up for, you know, from the mistakes that you made in your past. Everything can be overcame, in my opinion. So
there's a book I read recently called Be Your Future Self Now. It's by Benjamin Hardy. And he talks about that if you actually live intentionally, if you were to write down, Jason, if you were to write down, this is who I want to be in 5 years from now, like, you ought to do that with your wife. Do a video recording.
check it in 5 years.
And then check it in 5 years. If you live with any intentionality at all, you will blow your expectations from 2024 out of the water, because we are capable of so much more than we can even imagine. But it's the compound effect of those intentional steps every day that add up.
Right.
And that's why your advice is so cool too.
You got to take the risk as well, right? Living intentionally, I would so much agree with that. And then when you come across an opportunity that's risky, take it.
Yep.
Because that's the only way you're going to know. You know, with $200 and a 6-month-old baby and a slide-in camper, you know, a lot of people would argue that wasn't the smartest thing to do. My wife's dad argued that was a stupid thing to do, but it ends up being the smartest thing I ever did in my entire life. So take risks, live intentionally, take risks. That's probably the best advice I could give.
Well, thank you, Jason. It's been a
Yes, sir.
pleasure.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Hey, just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the end. In closing, I just wanted to add that if this message resonates with you, if it aligns with your values, and something in it today triggered something, then you can also look me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. We are really trying to help people live more intentional lives to kill the complacency with which they have subscribed to. I know there's many ways which I get sucked in all the time. So if this is beneficial, follow me there, spread the message, share. And if you want to wear a billboard of a message of kill complacency or live intentionally, then check out my merch store in show notes as well. But it's www.mindsetshop.com. Mindset is with an X, so it's MINDXET shop, SHOP.com. Mindsetshop.com. Check it out. Thank you guys so much, and have a great one.
Thank you for listening to Kill Complacency. Follow and share our podcast to change lives and inspire growth.